We're live.
Hey.
Woo!
All right. Okay. Hello. I'm Taylor. I'm hosting this lovely convo. I've never done this before, so I'm excited. I'm looking at my little spreadsheet here. So we're talking about cruise ships today and organizing cruise ships. And I guess we're going to go around and introduce ourselves first. All right, I'll start. I'm Taylor. What else do I have to say? My pronouns are she and her. I don't have a region or a position. I just worked on cruise ships and a member of Equity. So here I am.
I'll go next. My name is Sarah Quinn Taylor. My pronouns are she, her. I am an Eastern Chorus delegate. Full disclosure, Tay is probably my best friend, but my only experience with cruise ships is signing on to a cruise ship that Taylor worked on, and after 6 days being like, I have to get off of this cruise ship. I was like, this is not for me. So I have such mad respect, but I know very little and cannot wait to hear more. I'm popcorning to Robert.
I'm Robert Ariza. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm an Eastern Chorus delegate.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith Beck. Pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm an Eastern Principal delegate.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ruth Eitmiller. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a Western Stage Management delegate.
Hi, folks. My name is Ryan Morales, he, him pronouns, and I'm an Eastern Principal delegate.
Amazing. Okay, that is everybody. And then we need to read this statement and code of conduct, right? Okay, shall I do it? Yes.
Do it.
All right, here we go. I'm slightly dyslexic, so bear with me. All right. The Transparency Coalition is a group of Actors Equity Association delegates dedicated to leadership and communication that is truly representative of our union's members. We're bringing the discussion of convention resolutions and amendments directly to members through a series of live discussions, allowing members to ask questions and express their support or concerns in real time. We are committed to creating an environment that is rooted in respect so that we can productively create and sustain this inclusive, respectful, brave, safe space to discuss complicated issues. We will always extend that respect to members watching and seek the same in return. What we ask is that both the members engaging in conversation with us and the delegates themselves hold these two agreements. 1, speak from the I. 2, confront confusion or discomfort with curious questions. While we are happy to engage in constructive debate, we view harassment and discrimination as a clear threat to free expression and participants' safety, and as such will not be tolerated. We ask that members who engage with us give us the grace to say, I don't know, or to get it wrong sometimes. We bring you this series of convention conversations not only to have meaningful dialogue with current and future members, but to learn more ourselves about the important policies of our union and to enhance our ability to serve as trusted liaisons for our fellow union members. Wow, that went way better than I thought. I even practiced it a few times. Yay! Wow, okay. So I guess I'll just kind of start the conversation. I actually had to pull out my contract. I have an upcoming contract with Royal Caribbean that was supposed to happen in March of 2020, lol. And then I had one previous for in 2018, 2019. It was an 11-month contract, same with Royal Caribbean doing Hairspray. This upcoming contract is for Cats. So I actually pulled out my contract to like read through it because I hadn't read it in a long time to then help kind of spark some questions, some things that are different from land theater and then cruise ship theater. So right off the bat, what came to mind was just the aspect of it being international and how equity members can still perform on cruise ships versus like, even though it's non-equity work, technically, like equity members can't do non-equity theater, but they can do cruise ships because of the international waters aspect of it. And another thing that came to mind was the international casting. Like about only half of us were American in my cast, and same with Cats as well. You know, there's mainly the other half is from the UK, but we also have people from Singapore, people from Australia, things like that. So that came to mind initially when reading through all of this and thinking of the biggest difference here. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or wants to like add on to that, or if their personal experience, we can kind of start there with the international aspect of it, because that's kind of where I know it's a big deal, but I just don't know how to navigate that with equity. So
I don't have anything to add. Exactly related to what you were talking about is something that I was anticipating as a concern. And also to start, I really want this to happen. I really want us to figure out how to make this happen. I just also want to anticipate any ways, wording wise, we would want to make sure we're covered. Because that's something I was wondering is there anything in terms of like percentages of country of hire or anything when you're doing a cruise ship line? Because I would wonder if equity is in, what's to stop the cruise line from just not hiring American equity performers?
Ruth, do you have something?
Just to jump in and provide a little bit more context, we're talking about a resolution that's proposing that all cruise ship entertainment be unionized under equity contracts.
Mm-hmm. How does that work? Do you know, how does that work with like UK hires?
Well, so I think that's part of the question. Like, that's kind of what I'm wondering is this a situation where if we try and bring union involvement, how does that work with international casts? And is that something where we then have to do, like, you know, seek out creating a general cruise ship contract that is inclusive of all performers? And, you know, at what point does equity's jurisdiction no longer get to extend?
This is all so fascinating to me, because I also wonder, like, what parts of, because there's also, I think it's a constitutional amendment about the illegal alien clause of the Constitution in general. So there's like that whole aspect of it. Mm-hmm. But then it's interesting because I know so many people like Taylor that are equity members, but also work cruise ships. But then it's like, okay, so then is it more just about money or like working dues or like where that is going versus like, is it going into the corporation? Is it going into the union? Like for those members that are already union, like in the union or have the option to be in the union. It's so interesting because Meredith, I'm with you that like, I'm like, yes, and to organizing any work opportunities. For reference, non-resident alien is the, thank you, is the language, yes. Yeah, so I just think it's interesting, and I'm going to stop talking because I don't know a whole lot about it, but I am very much yes and of like, if people want to be in the union and organize around this and like it opens us up to more members or more, like, why not?
Well,
right?
I think also it provides a lot of people with the ability then to get more health and pension weeks right under their belt if this were to become a union jurisdiction. And that's a big deal right now, is the way things stand.
Yeah.
Well, I think something to think about too with this, because I just messaged our Kim Jordan, who is the head of organizing, who this is her resolution. She couldn't be on the call today, but she said to text her if anything comes up. And my understanding is both with and I'm not an expert in this, I could be wrong, but both with the ability for international artists to be able to join equity, they would have the option, which is actually very similar to anyone in the States who has the option. You could work on Broadway and not join the union. You're not ever compelled to join the union. It's just usually pretty strongly recommended by the people involved. And also, you wouldn't get the opportunity to have your pension, your health insurance, etc. But international performers might not need that. They would still be working under an equity contract, no different than any non-members can get an equity contract. I worked an equity contract and didn't join when I was 24, and it was a really good decision. But I got the paperwork and I threw it in the trash. I was like, I'm not ready to join, but I'll take the pay bump. So, and I believe, someone correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Jonathan knows this better, or someone else. I think there would still be a percentage of their income that gets paid to the union. So the union would lose out on maybe a new member who would have to pay initiation fees and things like that. But the working dues would still go back to the union regardless of who they hired, which is really, from my perspective, my limited perspective, that's what matters, is that these contracts, regardless of if they're hired internationally or with American actors, we still get the working dues from the contract, is my understanding.
The union would get the working dues, as well as the pension health plan would get, those contributions from the employer as well, whether or not that, which is true of any contract, if the person working is actually, part of the union's health plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I
then
mean, go ahead.
Well, no, if it's related to this, you should go, because I then have another question that might shift gears slightly.
You can, ask it.
So then something else I was wondering is, and maybe Taylor and Jonathan, you know this, has anyone ever tried, who is a member of Equity, to use the Business Theater and Events Memorandum of Understanding when doing cruise ship work and put themselves under contract? Has anyone ever? Do we know?
That I know of.
Because what I was
Not that I
wondering
know
is, like, the purpose of that contract is the member is putting themselves under union contract, and you're just finding a payroll service. So it seemed like cruise ship work would get approved for something like that, because it would certainly hit the money guidelines, the months of work. I think the criteria for memorandum of understanding is significantly less than that. I'm super invested in it just because I'm from Philadelphia and we do so much standardized patient work here. So that's something that's very accessible to us. But I was wondering about that with cruise ships, because I was thinking, these are 6-month contracts, 9-month contracts. If you are able to put yourself under contract and pay into your own pension, those health weeks, and you're just having to find the payroll service, I'm wondering why that's something that we haven't already been utilizing, and if there was a reason why maybe in the past that hadn't been going through. But I just don't know if people haven't been trying it.
So
I will add. No, go ahead, Tay.
No. I was gonna ask to explain what that was, because I've never heard of that before. Like putting yourself under contract, or what, like under equity rules or whatever. I haven't heard of that before.
And I don't know that this is the route that ultimately would be best for membership, because then it's also the member putting themselves under contract. It's not necessarily the creation of a cruise ship equity contract, which I'm sure would provide far more specific protections. But it is just something that already exists. And so I was wondering if there is any history of anyone using that, because, if you're going to be on a ship for 9 months, you're walking off that ship and you've got your year of health insurance ahead of you. So that's a pretty sweet deal if that can be figured out. And I feel like a lot of equity members would feel excited about that option, especially if it's also like you're leaving and doing hairspray, or, and you're like, I'm going to leave this and at least I'm taken care of, and have some, protections waiting as I leave. So, but I didn't know if maybe there had been pushback from that before.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I also did not know that was a thing. So that's amazing to know, and like add it to my research list. I do know only because I had posted in a couple of the Facebook groups today, like, hey, we're talking about this tonight. There were two members, one who I believe is based out of Florida, that could be incorrect, but there were two murmurings from members about how maybe this was, like, this has been brought up before, like, I want to say maybe in the 90s, maybe, but this has, like, been brought up before, and I honestly don't know. This will be a good, like, follow-up, and I'll drop it in the comments sometime. I don't know the story. I think maybe it was just a thing of, like, time and resources of staff and everyone trying to figure it out, because obviously it seems like a much bigger undertaking than I think any of us are like, but I do know that it has been attempted at least once before, or like brought up and then maybe was like tabled for another day, another era, whatever. But I do know that. Also, I'm interested because one member, and Tay, I think you can kind of speak to this. One of the, another member that I was talking to today before this conversation was talking about the, I guess, like the management structure almost on cruise ships, specifically of like, it's almost like, it's very militaristic. Like it's like, you know, the captain is like, so it would be interesting outside of like working dues and pension and health or whatever, like if there were safety concerns or something like that that came up with a unionized worker. Yeah, I'm just interested what that would mean. Like, is the captain going to be like, this is my boat? Forget it. I literally don't know.
Yeah, does he like override certain, you know, rules or codes of conduct that are set forth by any other unions? I don't know.
I mean, to my understanding, like so the hierarchy kind of on the ship, like we had like our company manager was somebody in the cast that took on that role as like a separate, as an extra job. Like I was the costume supervisor as well as in the show. And like, so because of cabin space and all of these things, like we do this on like as part of our contract. And then the hierarchy from there is like our production manager, but he oversees all of the other shows, the ice show and the aqua show. And this is just my class of ships. Like not every class of ship has the ice show and the aqua show also. But they're overseeing all of entertainment. And then it's like the cruise director, they answer to them. And then it's like the staff captain and the captain and like these people who aren't directly involved with theater. They're just a part of the hierarchy of this corporation. So it definitely, I like bringing up the military aspect of it is actually funny because there is a whole other half of our like crew duties that like, I don't know, it's very like, the line is sometimes really blurred with like, okay, what is like with equity at least. Like I know we're moving set pieces all the time. And I know like on land and equity, with equity rules, like you're technically supposed to be paid more if you as an actor are moving a set piece. But like we're moving the set pieces all the time and like doing our own wigs and our own costumes, mending our own costumes, all this stuff. We don't have swings. We only have understudies. So if somebody in the ensemble is on for their understudy, the whole show gets a reblock and we're doing a whole different track usually, or we're switching formations. And I don't know like where the rules fall there with equity because I haven't done a whole lot of equity contracts either. So I just know that that's sometimes stressful.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I actually think that is something that I, you know, had kind of thought about reading this resolution was like, yeah, what would change about the life of the actors on the ship? because I know
Yeah.
about those other duties and stuff. But in terms of, or in relation to like the company manager position or the costume supervisor, were those paid, like
Yeah.
paid extra jobs? So those
Yeah.
were, but then like other ship duties that are more minor were just kind of
Those were
accepted
a
as
part
part
of
of
our
the job.
contract. Yeah, they're a part of our contract. It's like, these are your extra duties you might have to do. You might have to do a 70s set one night. You might have to do Captain's Cocktail. You might have to, sing at some random event. Like, they have all of this listed here. And I only know that because I had to whip out this contract and read it because I hadn't read it in over a year. And like, yeah, so Captain's Cocktail, events, things like that, 80s night, parade. There's a parade we have to do, and that's all in the contract. But those extra duties, like costume, wigs, acting coordinator, aerial coordinator, and company manager, are all paid extra jobs.
I just want to amplify something really quick that Albadonis dropped in the chat. He said, why would we not want to organize this work? If there are obstacles to do this, we should be focusing on how to address that specific issue. But so many AEA members are already working these jobs. # make them equity. And I think that's a super good point, because it's like, I mean, there's so many nuances in terms of like building new contracts or like negotiations and what that means. But it is a good point in that, like, especially when you look at, and I only know this because I know Tay, but like Meredith had already said, the length of time, the money, etc. That stuff is all great, and honestly, why a lot of people take those jobs. It's better than contracts that we have on land. So it's interesting. I think something that stuck out to me in this conversation about how would you navigate like extra pay or like these protections that you're getting from the union. The piece that's interesting to me is your coworkers. Like you were saying, your cast is not all Americans or etc. So then it's like, where is the line, I guess, of, is someone in your cast who's not able to join going to look at something that you're getting and be like, but wait, I'm doing that and not, like, I don't have access to that? I don't know. I think it's,
but isn't that already a question
like, hey, everybody in.
Isn't that a question on land already anyway, whenever you have mixed companies, right, between non-equity and equity members? Like, that just makes it more incentive for non-equity people to want to join the union, I think.
Yeah, good point.
Although, like, when I was non-union and I was in a show that was equity and I was just taking the points, like, we were all treated as equity members. Like, it wasn't like, okay, we're taking a 10-minute break, but you guys don't get a 10-minute break because you're non-equity or whatever. Like, I think
it depends on the company, though, because there are companies where I have seen or I have heard that they are treated differently. They may be working under the same, like maybe safety codes, but like certain, like the equity members will get certain breaks or certain treatments that non-equity members will not get. I've definitely seen it firsthand.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's so interesting.
I think at the end of the day, like, we can acknowledge that the union raises the water level of not only safety considerations, but also pay for everyone in the industry. For the most part, there are times where people take advantage of non-union people, but we certainly set a standard that I think trickles down. Not that I'm a big fan of trickle-down economics. I would rather everyone be equity and us organize. But I think it would certainly, it sounds like this would certainly even improve the lot of cruise ship performers as well. They could be making not only the equity benefits, but also getting more protections, getting more standardized pay across responsibilities, having somewhere to go, like just having a business rep who handles cruise ships. Imagine that. Like, I've never worked on a ship, but tell me, Taylor, like you have the experience. Like, how awesome would it be to have a cruise ship, a business rep dedicated to cruise ships who you could call when you're at port and say, hi, we have a problem. You know what I mean? On top of the structure that's already there.
Yeah. I mean, there were plenty of shoreside people to contact if something had gone wrong, like, or if we needed, you know, if there was an issue, we had to do like show reports, all that stuff still like normal. And there that was sent to Shoreside, and you know, and there's all they would come on and sail every once in a while. The office, the Shoreside people would come and sail every once in a while and check in, you know. But yeah, as an equity member, I would love to have those insurance weeks accounted for, and I would love to have a representative Shoreside for this, that's outside of the corporation, you know, but is like on our like knows exactly what is right and what is wrong. So I mean, I know a handful of people on my ship that would have loved that. And I'm also now curious, what happens on land theater? Like if somebody from London came over, like, do they join the union? Like, how does that work? Like if they came from West End to Broadway, like what, because wouldn't that be the same if they came from London to the ship, if it was like organized by equity?
They do join the union, and they depends on, you know, whether they've gotten a green card or just getting a work visa to do a specific production. But once they get an equity contract, they can join the union. How much they can work in the country will then depend on both, depending on the type of thing. They sometimes do have to get equity's permission, but also, again, on what kind of work visa they have. I had two thoughts. Well, one, just since we're talking about foreign workers again, I wonder if who the employer is an issue. Like if it is an American producer, whatever the nationality of the line is, if the producer of the actual theater piece that's being done on a cruise ship is American, I would think that would be easier to negotiate an equity contract. If they're from another country, you know, then say it's a British production company, then, but British Equity hasn't organized cruise ships yet either, but maybe they would as well, you know, so that gets kind of confusing in a way, if whose jurisdiction it would be if other unions did start organizing cruise ships. But I think if America does it first and US Equity does it first, I think it'll be a lot easier for it to be sort of blanket for the industry, that they would just be American equity contracts. Ryan said, you know, the idea of standardizing, I think, is like the crucial key to this, because it's an industry where things can be done so differently from ship to ship, from line to line, from the type of show to the type of show, and to actually have set rules that are negotiated for what salaries should be, for safety concerns. You know, if you have a bargaining entity like Equity talking to employers, they have so much data and experience with other contracts to say, you know, swings will really save you money in the end. You know, they can tell you the benefits of the things that they're not doing now. And again, also getting standardized bump pays for things like if you are doing wardrobe or wigs or being a company manager or things like that. You know, on other kinds of shows, I think Equity would balk at trying to even negotiate those things into the contract. Or often a lot of those things are things that sometimes get shoved to the stage manager. But because, you know, you can only have so much staff on a cruise ship, those things kind of make sense. And if actors are willing to do it and could get a standardized, decent amount of money for it, that would be wonderful. And, you know, the more money the actor's getting paid, the more dues goes to the union too. So to me, there's like no reason not to try and organize it. There's certainly some obstacles, but I think the obstacles are the whole reason why they should be union.
I agree.
Sue Caputo says, yes, Jonathan, I'm trying to find my notes from R. Kim Jordan. That's who wrote this resolution presentation from February. She understands all these nuances and presented a valid argument to folks to protect folks. Ruth, you had a thought.
Yes. It kind of relates to all of this, but also kind of goes back to Al's comment about why would we not want to organize this work? one of the things I find really fascinating about this resolution and reading it is that Equity went really far down this road in the past. I don't know when, but you know, in the resolution, it lines out like they talk to these people, they talk to these people. It talks about Equity worked with, they had the full backing of the International Federation of Artists, with the understanding that Equity would take the lead on any such organizing. So like the international piece of it was already being worked out. They had talked to a couple of cruise lines who were very interested. The cruise lines had agreed that like health and pension needed to be a part of this. And reading it, it seems like so much was worked out. And I would be fascinated to learn why it never got to completion. Like, why didn't it happen? If all of these conversations and agreements were reached, what stopped the train?
Yeah, who do we ask about that? Do we just ask who was like in office at that time in our equities governance? Like, that's the question, right? Because who would have been dealing with that that topic?
This is the ultimate
Jordan
cliffhanger.
probably
I'm
does
like,
have
but what
a lot of that
happened?
information.
Sorry, say it again now?
I also wonder. Oh, go ahead, Jonathan.
I missed this.
I was just saying that Kim Jordan probably does have a lot of that information. Unfortunately, she had to bow out tonight, but we can chat with her and find out.
We're gonna follow up because now
Yeah.
I've never been so invested in cruise ships. One other thing that I'm thinking about, and this is a literal hypothesis about maybe why it didn't happen, and like back to Al's comment of like why would we not want to, or like what would be in the way, is, and this is something I learned being on the cruise with Tay for that week, is like a lot of these cruise ships, the boats themselves are registered, would you say, Tay? Like internationally. So
Yeah,
at like
not technically
the flag,
American.
like the flags. Yeah, so like so if Royal Caribbean, for instance, is headquartered in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, like is an American company, I believe they like the flag on the head of the ship is like the Jamaican flag.
It's
Because
Bahamas.
the ship, or Bahamas. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, and I guess maybe it's like a taxes thing, probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, but I'm wondering if that is like the biggest obstacle. Because are you dealing with and now, Ruth, I'm so interested about the International Federation, like everybody's on board about this. What happened?
I have an update. I texted Arkim. She said, it's a long story. Too long to type. Talk to me later. So I know that's a horrible cliffhanger for everyone who's listening to this. I'm gonna message her and go like, there's 7 people on this call, and anyone who's watching who are like, but what was it? Okay. I'm trying to figure out where we can get this like end of the story.
No one's gonna sleep tonight. Ugh.
It is weird with the ships being registered in another country, and like while Royal Caribbean's headquarters are in the US, like it isn't technically an American company. Like nobody who worked on cruise ships was able to file for unemployment during COVID because who had worked on like our pay stubs or whatever from Royal Caribbean didn't count because it's not technically an American company. So I didn't qualify for unemployment through Royal Caribbean.
Oh, we have to figure this out. That can't happen.
So that was a hiccup as well that I don't think I didn't really realize until COVID. And I was like, oh, I'll just file in Florida because, I was working for Royal Caribbean. But like nobody's unemployment went through because Royal Caribbean isn't technically an American company. So I don't know if that has something to do with why that kind of came to a halt. I don't know if there's something with international waters that they can't control.
Could I ask, is it not the case with some companies that they are outside producers for cruise ships who are technically the employer, or is it always the cruise line itself that is the employer?
It's the cruise line. It's the cruise line itself as the employer. So like, you mean like if they had a guest director come in for a show?
No. I mean, I thought that there are some cruise companies that actually hire production companies to produce the whole show themselves.
Oh, I see.
They like hire an outside entity to produce the shows. Well, and like Disney Cruises, is that an American-owned company?
I think Disney is.
I mean, Disney is an American company. I just don't know if it has the Disney name, but technically the ship itself might not be American. I don't know.
Yeah,
But I
that's
would
a
feel
good
like that would be
question.
I feel like that'd be a great place to start because Disney is already a bargaining partner of ours in Disney World,
Yeah.
and why not try and add on their cruise ships?
Yeah, that's an interesting point with Disney, especially. I don't know about the like producing companies coming in. I know for Hairspray and Cats and everything, that's like through Royal Caribbean, like they got the rights to the shows or whatever, and they condensed them and all this. Then we do a second show that's like a Royal Caribbean produced show. And so I don't know. I don't know about the like outside production companies.
I mean, there used to be a company, Gene and Ryan Productions, and they used to put shows on cruise ships, but I don't technically know who the employer was, but they were a New York-based company.
I've thought now of RWS Entertainment does Holland America Cruise Line. That could be interesting. I know RWS Entertainment does theme parks as well, and Holland America Cruise Lines.
This is a total left turn, but it's based on what Meredith said earlier that got my head spinning of like the idea of an MOU. So like being able to do, I don't understand MOUs super well, so I might be talking out of my ass, but maybe someone else can help me with this. If you do like a theater adjacent type work, you can get an MOU that essentially allows you to take some of the money and pay for a health week, right? So you essentially are taking $700 out of your paycheck to get a week's health, and that's how people will get their like last week of health. I know people who do it for like, I know a guy who does a lot. I want to say it's for like medical, being like the person who helps medical students, the actor who does that kind of thing. Because it's not under our jurisdiction, but it's not scabbing either. You know what I mean? And so it makes me wonder if this might open up the way for people who are to perform on ships as like who gig onto ships to potentially use that gigging as an MOU. Because at the end of the day, you're just throwing money into the health fund. You're just essentially buying a week through related work. So I wonder what the ability for that is or whatnot. I wonder if this opens up a whole lovely can of worms for that I know I imagine our union will be slow to respond to, but might in the long term be very, very useful and exciting for certain members.
Ryan, can you clarify MOU for anyone that is watching that's not familiar with those initials?
I only have a base understanding and not enough to explain it beyond that. It unfortunately.
Let me see if I can find something on it.
Yeah, I think Jonathan.
The memorandum of understanding.
That's what it is.
And in I don't know, the full breadth of how it's used. I know it's used a lot by stage managers for trade shows that aren't on a business theater contract, or stage managing a convention or something like that. And and people have used it to do like a one-person show, and maybe in a venue that isn't necessarily a theater or a place that is not, an equity theater. I don't know that people can ever use it to be, a member of a company, of a play or a musical at a theater that is not using the union contract, just to put yourself on the union contract, like your own guest artist contract. So, I don't think if you are cast in a show on a cruise ship, whether it's a book show or a review, with other people who aren't on the MOU, that I'm not sure that would even be possible. If you are a self-contained act that could get booked onto a cruise ship, that I think you might be able to at least try to get on an MOU. But as far as a show that has other people in it, I'm not sure that would be possible.
Yeah, and even if it was, I think that like that's a solution that people could use in the immediate future, right? But ultimately, I think that what this resolution is speaking to is a broader kind of solution to this, or a possibility, right, to this topic that would allow a lot more people to be able to get their insurance weeks up and better protections on the ship, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And isn't it
Well,
always
one of the-
nicer to just be offered a contract that is a contract and you say yes, as opposed to yourself having to negotiate with the producer and with
Exactly.
the union to try and get yourself a job?
Well, and when I brought
And
it
there are
up earlier,
different protections that come if it's an actual contract and not just an MOU, right? MOU gets you the health and pension, but it doesn't necessarily get you the same working condition protection.
Mhm.
Right.
You're
see.
essentially just paying money out of, you're literally saying, I'm going to take $600 out of what I made or whatever the amount is and give it to the union so I can get a health week. So it's very, very different, but it's really, really useful for folks that do some equity work and just need our health week or two short and have the access to that kind of work. It doesn't work for everyone, but
Well, I know some singers who will do like just guest entertainer contracts that they just go on and they do like cabaret set for a week or two or things like that, and they are kind of doing their own kind of show. That would be a good opportunity for someone doing those little like 1 or 2 week guest entertainer contracts to get that extra health week or whatever the MOU that you guys are talking about.
Definitely.
Because a lot of people just come on for a few weeks and they do a cabaret or a piano. They're in the piano lounge or they're in the jazz bar or whatever, and they just do their own kind of cabaret, and then yeah. Al says MOU must be 1099 work.
That answers that question.
No.
That's fine.
I also think it's interesting in this resolution, there's some wording about why it's important now and how there's so much cruise ship work and they have money to do the kind of adjustments to meet the equity safety standards, money that not a lot of feeders do have. And so if we organize this is where there's going to be a lot of work when we start to come back. And so there is an recommendation and urging for this to happen sooner rather than later because of that.
Yeah. Just speaking on the working conditions thing, because of the amount of space on the ship, cabin space and backstage space, it can't always accommodate for those specific equity rules. Like we don't have enough cabins to house a wardrobe supervisor full-time, a wig supervisor, enough stage staff to move every single set piece that needs to be moved, especially if the schedules get switched around. There's an aqua show happening at the same time. These stage staff are running around doing every single show. And so there's a space issue with the working conditions. Like the lead can't have their own dressing room. There's just not enough space for it. I don't know if that's an equity rule either. I don't know if that's an equity rule, but like, I'm not sure what the dressing room regulations are. But there's space issue with that. And I was on their current biggest cruise ship and we're all kind of still packed in there. So this isn't even the smaller cruise lines. And there's a cabin space issue with those extra employees that would help the working conditions of the actors. That is an obstacle that I'm not really sure how to navigate there. As you speak on working conditions, that immediately came to my mind. The cabin space and the backstage space is very
Well,
small.
it sounds like that would be a point that equity would have to kind of like give a little bit, right? And say, okay,
Yeah.
obviously there's a culture and a way that things have been done on cruise ships that is not going to be the same as working on land, and that they're going to have to give a little bit, you know,
like protect us where they can, those health pension weeks, where they can, and working with the international people where they can. And then
right. I think it's important to get those payments for like any kind of ship duties that go above and beyond what a normal, I don't know, that's up to, they would have to get a lot of feedback, I think, from people who have worked cruise ship contracts to see across the board what seems to be the consensus of like, well, these things I'm used to doing that because, you know, that's just like expected on a cruise ship versus like, oh, these things feels like they should get a bump, you know, however small.
Yeah. Like the extra crew duties, fine. That's that's cruise culture. You know, that's what we
Mhm.
signed up for. We're all crew members at the end of the day. Like in case of an emergency, we all hold an emergency card. We all have something to do.
Right.
But then on speaking on like those other extra things that like that may kind of be blurring a line a little bit, equity could easily step in there.
Totally.
Having a
Well, and
representative of shoreside through equity, not through Royal Caribbean or Norwegian or Disney or whatever, would be extremely helpful, I think.
I think equity is good at seeing, you know, what the model is of what they're walking into when they're negotiating something new. You know, under TYA, the actors set up and break down the sets and do the costumes themselves and drive the van. You know, and all those things have been negotiated in so that, you know, it's done the right way. And, you know, in Disney World, there's all kinds of things that you wouldn't do in a regular show necessarily, but because that's how Disney works. And, you know, so equity is not going to say, no, you have to have, you know, your 36 inches of dressing room space.
Right.
You know, they're going to be able to work within the confines of what exists and not make them build a whole new ship, you know?
Right. I mean, I could go on and on about things that I think should be regulated that I think were not right, like the shoe situation, or like when we, like ordering tights from shoreside would take weeks, and it's like we're dancing in ripped tights. Our shoes are broken. This is not safe. Like there's tracks moving up and down platforms. There's like the tech aspect is crazy. So I think, and so if we're dancing in broken shoes or shoes that don't fit, or if we're going on for an understudy and we don't have a costume that fits, and then I'm as wardrobe supervisor trying to prepare for my show, but I now have to quickly sew up this costume for someone, which all has happened. It's all happened. And I think that's absolutely like I'm sewing a costume during a warm up, like because I, as an extra duty, it was like I was getting paid extra to be wardrobe supervisor, but like there should be a costume for this person as the understudy. There should be their own costume. And like these are these little things that I'm thinking of now that like equity absolutely could get under control. That is very easy to kind of just set those rules in place.
Unfortunately, those aren't really just issues that are on cruise ships. You know, it happens all over the place. And even on Broadway, they're like, you know, when are my new shoes coming? Mine are falling apart.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's happening in the middle of the Caribbean and our shoe breaks. Like, what can anyone do really? You know. So.
Do you have
plenty of understudies go on without costumes for them? You know.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Sorry.
No, I was wondering. So, do you have like under the title of a stage manager when on a ship, or are they under a different title?
It is stage, but it is stage manager, but we had different stage managers throughout the whole contract. So like we would randomly get a new stage manager, and we would have to have extra rehearsals so that they could practice calling the show. And it would be a new person like every 2 or 3 months. So we didn't have somebody set for the whole. Everybody's on their own contract dates except for the cast. The cast signs on and signs off the same day. Anyone else, it could be switched. Even our production manager, stage managers, stage staff, these people who just randomly show up one day and are now in charge of this whole track of the show. And we're just like, I hope you know what you're doing. Like, and so then we're all like, so yeah, they are stage managers. There are stage managers, but they don't stay with us the whole contract. They get switched around a lot, which is scary for us sometimes. Because we get used to one, you know, and we trust them. We know they know what to do. They know us. We know them. There's a bond, you know, and then their contract's up, and then it's somebody new, and it's very, very quick. The turnover is so quick.
That'd be a great bargaining point from equity for negotiating to show how successful it is when the stage manager is part of the equity company and stays with
Yeah.
the company. And you don't have those scary, dangerous issues and having to call extra rehearsals because they know the show and they're there for the duration.
Yeah, our
Mhm.
music director also signs on and signs off with us. They rehearse with us and they sign on and off with us. I forgot about our music director stays with us on the show. So we have the same person conducting the show, thank goodness. But it would be really, really nice to have the same stage manager as well. Sign on and sign off with us.
I mean, I think the potential payoff of having this work out is pretty massive. So I know that, you know, they'd be building something kind of custom and there would be a lot of negotiations. And I do think it
Yeah.
would be need your input. You know, they need actual input from people who have worked extensively in this industry. But I mean, the money, if they're thinking of it from a money standpoint, it's there. So I hope
Yeah.
they'll go for it.
I think it's definitely doable. And like you said, like a custom situation given the circumstances of just the cruise ship culture and the life on ship life and things like that. But I think there's definitely room for improvement here that equity could 100% contribute a lot to. And it would be an incentive too for equity members to want to work on cruise ships. And it just is a constant level up for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think honestly, it doesn't seem like there's a strong argument for any delegates at the convention to vote this down, right?
Right,
Because
yeah.
ultimately, it's you know, as we've talked about on this show before, the advisory to council, you know, like it's a suggestion ultimately. So a strong suggestion, be it that from convention, but there's nothing to lose, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. Does anybody have any other thoughts or questions on this topic?
I mean, there's the unfortunate part that this will not be something that we're talking about it now, but at convention, it's very likely that the rules will stay, that votes on this are kept secret, conversations kept on this is kept secret, that this won't be something that was announced that the convention did because of the standing rules of the convention. They currently hide all votes and conversations on anything related to organizing. So I just had a thought of like, man, it would just mean so much to like for us as a convention to really take a stand and be like, yeah, this needs to happen, and help encourage staff and union energy in that way. And I guess we will, even if it's not public. But it just makes me sad to think that certain things like this, that the resolved clause is like a sentence. You know what I mean? It's literally just do this. We want this organized. We're not really giving away how the sausage is made at all. So that's a tangent. But I think even if it's secret, it does, being able to, as a collective convention, say this matters, we want energy put into this, I think is very strong. And it's exciting to get to do things like this, even if this might happen, even if we didn't vote for it, it might happen slower, it might continue to get kicked down the road. That's something exciting to me, at least, about being able to vote for certain things, even if they're in the works, you know.
Absolutely.
Something that occurred to me, I've never worked cruise ships, and I only was ever offered one once. And the reason I turned it down was when I thought about going away for 6 months, and it was good money, and it was a Mediterranean cruise, which would have been awesome. But
Oh, yeah.
I would have lost my health insurance and then come back and have to start at square zero to try and just start getting weeks again. And I was like, I could be going 2 years without health insurance, and it just wasn't worth that gamble to me. And how nice would it be to be able to take a 6-month gig and know you're getting your health and pension weeks? You know, so I'm already a yes vote.
I mean, and
I vote
during
aye.
our contract and in rehearsals, the 2 months of rehearsals and the 6 or 9 month contract, whatever it is, we are covered. I think it's I have it here, the Siemens insurance, and so we do have medical insurance and through Royal Caribbean, like we are covered if something does happen. But it would be so nice to have that comfort, like that extra layer of comfort for when we're done and have earned those weeks. So yeah, that would be amazing. Does anybody else have any other thoughts, questions, concerns?
Hope it happens.
Yeah.
Say
all.
what?
Hope,
Oh, hope
I
it
hope
happens.
happens. What you just
Yeah.
said is so like that's actually such a rare for us. Like what a luxurious position to be in too, to be like, oh, I'm actually insured while on this contract. So I'm just earning weeks for my future. What a novel
Yeah.
idea. I
Yeah,
think that sounds
absolutely. We have about 5 minutes till we've hit the hour. I know we wanted to touch on caregiving as well really quick and just give a shout out to PAL. Does anybody want to elaborate on that while we're here? We have the link here for their website. Let me see if I can
I'll
copy
speak
and
a little to this, and Ryan, if you have anything to say, but we aren't actually going to do a full episode about caregiving for various reasons, but we really did want to shout out to the people who have written resolutions about this, to PAL that is really working on this and saying that this is an important issue, and remind us all that caregiving is not just about children. It's about anybody who has to care for someone else.
And just to be clear, PAL stands for Parent Artist Advocacy League for Performing Arts and Media.
Awesome.
Yes, thanks, Robert. And Ryan's dropping those links in the chat.
Oh, yes. Okay, great. Yeah, the link is there. Awesome. Well, I think, this was a very interesting, helpful conversation. I hope people can take a lot out of this, and hopefully is eye-opening to people who haven't done cruise ships and to people who have, and kind of sparks the conversation, maybe inspires people to come forward, tell their stories, what they with instances that's happened on the ship that equity could have prevented, things like that. And hopefully we can get the ball rolling on this and make it happen. Ryan.
Can I speak to that? Because I think something that we maybe discount as members is the power of our personal stories in enacting change in policy. It's one thing to send an email to a delegate and say, I really want this thing to happen. Are you going to vote for it? Which I think still do. Please email us. We can't get enough emails. Well, I guess we could, but emailing someone and saying, hey, are you planning to vote for this? Here's a story that might influence you. This is something I experienced by not being able to be protected by my union that I love, or whatever you want to say. But sharing your story with delegates and counselors who might look at this, and we didn't really dip into some of the whatchamacallit, talking about why people might not want to vote for this. The fact that it tends to be a certain demographic that gets hired in cruise ships. It's a difficult job we just literally brought up caregivers. It could be a really difficult job for people who are caregivers. It tends to be New York centric. We didn't really dig into reasons people could argue against it. But I think sharing with folks your story, if this is something you're really passionate about seeing getting voted up in the convention, send an email, write it out, ask if you can get on a call, especially if anybody's on the fence about it, because people can listen to us talk about why it's good and all these things, but without stories from membership, real tangible stories, change doesn't always happen. It's harder to change someone's mind. It's harder to change someone's perspective. And I think members' individual stories have a lot of power that we forget about or we underestimate.
And to piggyback off of that, I think, should this resolution be passed in convention, I think it's important that the union, takes the opinions and the experiences of people who have actually worked these contracts to formulate the negotiation going forward, because I think that's also what gets lost a lot of times, is it's a group of people that think that they're doing everything that's in the best interest of the members, but you have to actually take the information from the members and then use that.
As an equity member that doesn't know a whole lot, to share your story, where could I influence my friends to share that? Where do we say, who do we contact? What do we do? Do we just email you? Do we email y'all? How do we get our stories out? Yeah,
I wish there was a more streamlined response for this, but ultimately, I would say find whatever, equity governance representative you have that you feel closest to, that you want to confide this information to, and give it to them and ask them to send it up the ladder.
So I could just email Sarah, or
Yeah.
have friends email me and I forward it to Sarah.
Yes.
And that would
I would
be
actually, I would encourage you to email as many people as possible, because I think that people that need to hear it are the people that are actually the most distanced from it. Sarah, like you and Sarah are buddies. Like, she can forward it all she wants to other equity delegates or counselors, but it doesn't have the same weight coming directly from a member. So if I'll put a resource in the chat that's all of the counselors' emails. You can just copy and paste and put that all in. I wish, like Robert said, there was just a way to email all delegates. But you could, if you wanted to, you could go to the delegates that are in your region and email all of them and say, "Hi, I'm a member of your region. I vote for this region," whatever it is. But I think the biggest thing is connecting with someone who doesn't know you, someone who maybe is farther away from understanding why organizing cruise ships is so important. Talking to those kinds of people, or talking to people, if we're talking about caregiving, talking to someone who isn't a caregiver, emailing all the dudes, you know what I mean? Or who, a lot of us, I don't get it. Like, I would love to learn more, and I'm sad we aren't having the conversation tomorrow to do that. But like, you could almost target it to the people you think need or would benefit, like would be able to better represent union members as a whole. That's just me going off the cuff on that. But I really think like reaching out to not just the people that you know, but really the people you don't, is how you can build some bridges to make like change.
Awesome.
I would just say too that in the hopeful world of the future where this passes convention and starts to happen, keeping tabs, probably Rebecca Kim Jordan would be a good person, because I imagine she would be involved in negotiating, but also just finding out who then becomes like head point person on equity staff for organizing and negotiating, and just try and keep in touch and give them pertinent information. One would hope that they would reach out to the membership and say, if you've worked cruise ships, please give us your feedback, or then we might even put out a survey to membership to try and get that kind of information for people who have worked those contracts. That's, hopefully that's the way it would work.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Well, if does anybody have anything else to add? Did we touch on everything, the main points that we wanted to discuss? Awesome. Well, we're at an hour. So, yeah, I think we got the ball rolling here pretty well. I mean, I think this will inspire a lot of people. I hope it does. And I can, as an equity member who's worked on cruise ships, who doesn't know a whole lot about equity, can gather some stories, gather some things, and show people where to, share their story. And we can get this going, hopefully, when theater starts again. Yay! Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Have a good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
Taylor.
Our next episode is going to be tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We're going to talk about workplace safety.
Yay.
And intimacy directors and choreographers.
Yeah, which is part of safety.
Yeah. Bye, guys.